I was driving home late at night from a double shift, so admittedly, I was tired. I had my radio blaring to keep awake. I was driving through the backwoods on a road that I had learned to take as the occasional shortcut. During the day, the road was busy and congested, but at night it was always empty except for a stray deer or a raccoon. I'm driving, jamming out, and admittedly speeding. I take a corner too quickly, though, and there in front of me was a young girl, about 19 or 20, with long, dark hair, wearing jeans, and a light-colored blouse. For a split second, I saw her eyes reflected in the headlights, saw the look of shock and fear on her face, and I swerved hard off the road and into a ditch. There was no way that I didn't hit her. I jumped out of the car and started walking back to the spot I had last seen her and flagged down a passing car to tell them to call 911. This was in the days before everyone had cell phones. Cops came, EMT came, and there was no one, no body, no girl, and I was given a sobriety test on the spot. Well, I get home much later than I should have, and my wife is waiting for me as I hadn't arrived on time. I'm shaken as I can still see the girl's face in my head. I recant the story to my wife, who goes white. She runs frantically upstairs and grabs a yearbook and tells me to flip through the senior pictures. Page 3. Wouldn't you know it, there she is, looking exactly as I had seen and described her. I ask my wife if she knows the girl or if she has hers or her family's number. That's when my wife informed me that the girl died 3 years prior during a hit and run around that exact curve. I wasn't from the area. There were no ghost stories involving that road, and I had no way of knowing that the girl that I picked out of a lineup of seniors was already dead. To this day, I still wonder what happened. Was I tired? Had I heard her name or seen her face on like a memorial newscast or clipping and not registered it? Or had I actually encountered what, to this very moment, I still consider the most terrifying event in my life, as I, honest to God, thought I was going to jail? I'm not 100% positive, but I can say this. I can still see her face lit up by my headlights, clear as a bell. Story 2. I used to work at a movie theater, and there was a lot of weird crap that happened there. I was a manager, so I had to close down the theater often at 3 a.m. and was one of the only ones who could access different parts of the theater for safety reasons, such as the ceilings above the auditoriums to change lights. One night, I'm literally the only manager on duty and the only one with access to a catwalk that was above the lobby ceiling. This catwalk has most of the equipment for the television displays of ticket times on it. One day, the whole system just gets buggy and turns off. Well, I run up there to try to reset it and notice the box that powered the TVs is unplugged. Note, I'm the only one with keys and thus access to this room. So obviously I'm looking for foul play if someone broke into here to mess with me. There's lots of clowning around at work, at the theater, and we had a lot of fun. But all available hiding spots were empty and I was alone. One night, myself and a fellow manager were closing the theater on a super busy Saturday night. I'm pretty sure it was one of the Hobbit movies. The theater is locked and no customers are in there, and I'm walking around turning off everything in a breaker room. I think I hear running outside the room, and I assume my coworker is finished upstairs. I radio him to turn off games while he's down here, and he radios back, "All right, man, I'm almost finished upstairs." So that freaked me out because we have had cases where people try to sneak into the theater at night. So I bust through the door and think I see a girl's foot zooming into one of the theaters. I asked him if he had turned off the lights in Theater 3, the one the girl went in, and he said he had. Now I assumed the girl couldn't see and would have a hard time looking for a place to hide. So I told him to leave them off because I think a girl is in there and to shine a booth light to look for her. He radios me, "I see her laying down in the middle top row." So I tell him to flick on the lights, and I storm in there, ready to yell at her. I get to the row, and nope, there's no one there. I look around and realize I was played, so I walkied up to the booth. "Haha, you got me." But as I look up, I see him in the booth window, jaw dropped. Well, this sent a chill down my spine because I've had to fight off a lot of drugged up people in the lobby in theaters, and for some reason I felt as if I was about to be attacked. I whipped around in preparation of probable scratches and biting, but again, there was no one there. He walkies me, "Dude, what the..." I asked what happened, and he was too shaken to answer, so I asked him where she went, and he was pointing at the screen. Well, I ran over to it and opened it up so I could get behind there to drag this girl out. I kept saying I was about to call the police if she didn't hurry up and get out, but as I got behind there was nothing. I hear, "Did you get her?" from the coworker on the walkie, and I told him she wasn't in here and if he was sure. Then when I looked out into the auditorium and at the exit doors, I saw her. Naked as all hell, but like pale, grossly pale, and just standing in the doorway. I looked away to get my leg over the front of the screen room, and she was now like 20 feet closer. Now I still remember how there was just this naked girl standing there, and I shouted at her, and she flinched and bolted, and I immediately followed. I was gaining on her when she turned the corner and into an empty hallway, and as I rounded, she was gone, just poof. I immediately went over to the cameras and checked the footage to see where she went, and literally the only thing I see in the hallway camera was me running out of the auditorium and stopping in disbelief. No lady, nothing, just me. I sat there in disbelief for about 5 minutes until my coworker said, "I'm too scared to come down alone," and we ended up closing up shop together. Story 3. I'm not sure it was a ghost, but around 1995, I encountered what is commonly called a shadow person. At the time, I was living in a double-wide mobile home that my late wife and I had purchased new. The home had been set up on what had previously been farmland. The location had never been the site of any home of any kind and is at least 1,000 feet from where any house is or has, to the best of my knowledge, ever been. In light of this, you would not think that home would be a likely location for a haunting. However, my late wife and I did on occasion see several rather strange occurrences there, the most startling of which I will relate here. This encounter took place at night after my wife and I had retired for the evening. Normally at night my wife and I would leave a light on all night in the bathroom farthest from our bedroom because there were usually children in the house. That bathroom was just outside the children's bedrooms and would provide them with a night light. However, on that night, all the children were staying somewhere else, and there was no one in the house except my wife and I. As was usual, though, we had left the light in the bathroom on out of habit, and it cast a glow through our open bedroom door, barely lighting the room. Some time had passed after we had laid down, and I was unable to sleep. I assumed, though, that my wife was asleep because her breathing had become regular and reached a point at which it sounded like she was asleep. While lying there, unable to sleep, I began to become aware of a presence that I could not explain other than to say I knew we were not alone. I was laying there trying to convince myself that it was only my imagination when suddenly and silently a figure moved in through our bedroom door and proceeded parallel to our bed in a smooth gliding motion. Then, rounding the corner of our bed, took up a fixed position at the foot of our bed. Strangely, I seemed to be acutely aware that this entity was conscious of us and was intently watching us while I was laying there watching it. The entity can best be described as something that had the appearance of black smoke or a shadow. The strangest thing about this whole situation was my complete lack of fear. Although I was acutely aware that some being had entered our room, and there was no doubt in my mind that it was absolutely not of this earth, at least not as we perceived it, it did not seem to arouse any fear response in me. I would say it aroused a feeling that would fit somewhere between creepy and curiosity, especially considering the fact that I was sure it was aware of me as I was of it. After some time, I had almost convinced myself that I was imagining it due to my drowsy condition and the dim light. Suddenly, I realized that my wife was no longer breathing like she was asleep. Her breathing had become almost silent. Speaking in a calm voice, I said, "Honey, you awake?" To which she answered, "Yes." Then I added, "Do you see anything?" I was expecting her reply to be, "What do you mean?" But instead, much to my surprise, she said, "You mean that thing standing at the foot of the bed?" When she said this, I did finally become somewhat nervous, and we both then began to pray. We lay there for about 10 minutes, softly saying prayers, and then it was gone. But it didn't just disappear. Over a period of about 20 seconds, became less solid, like smoke clearing, and our perception of its presence became weaker and weaker until it wasn't there anymore. Then it was as if nothing had ever been there. Nothing like this has ever happened since, and the only evidence that it ever did are my memories of it. Story 4. Back in 2015 and 2016, my mom owned a restaurant. This restaurant used to be a doll factory. Unfortunately, there had been a fire, and around 13 to 15 people had passed in the process. Fast forward a few decades or so, and it had been rebuilt and remodeled new. Once it was bought and the new cleanup began, we had a cleaning service come in to make everything look pretty for when guests would start to come in for evening service. And over the course of a week, the 2 women she had hired quit, claiming they had seen ghosts in the mirror upstairs by the bathroom, and another saying all her cleaning supplies kept being thrown around. My sister was on the upstairs computer and claimed she saw the silhouette of a hand pointing over the screen and a long, pale face of a man behind her shoulder. My other sister had been touching up her makeup in that same mirror and claimed that while she was doing it, an outline of handprints appeared on either side of her in the mirror, as if a set of hands had just pressed on it. And me? Well, I was going through a breakup and hid in the break room behind the kitchen. One of the revolving chairs started rocking and spinning slowly, and a left behind plastic grocery bag that had once contained someone's lunch started dancing in its place, crumbling in on itself. I told whoever was there to leave me alone because I just wanted some peace to myself. It was a hard breakup at the time, but they stopped. Odd happenings continued to happen off and on throughout the year. After a year of ownership, we had family circumstances change and we had to move. We had grown fond of the place and their spirits, but we were happy to be going. We had had enough paranormal activity from that place to last us a lifetime. Once we had cleared out the restaurant and got things packed and cleaned to selling perfection, we looked around and got a couple of pictures. Out of curiosity, I stood back and took a flash picture of the dining hall where our VIP customers would sit. I snapped a few more as I went. I sat down to look at them, and there, in the pictures, every single one, up close and zoomed in, you could see what was very clearly 3 men. A man with a long beard poking his head out from behind one of the hanging banners. A man in a long garb with eyes almost as big as saucers sitting at a table looking straight at me. And one in the middle of the hall between tables, standing idly, as if just waiting for his picture to be taken. In each picture, you could see something, a person, a face, somewhere, a hand in the dark. I didn't get to the 4th picture before all of a sudden, my phone, it just died. Circle of death and black screen on what had been a 60-something% battery life, almost brand new phone. Only had it like 6 months at that point. Then, as soon as I stood up, something almost tripped me, and my phone flew out of my hand and onto the floor and cracked the corner of the screen. I could never get that phone back on or in working condition. It's in a box in my old closet at my mom's somewhere. Story 5. In high school, there was this house that sat on the outskirts of the small town I lived in. Must have been built in the 50s, but clearly abandoned. Every now and then a few friends and I would go out there, only in the day, to sneak around and check it out. The old owners had to have left in a hurry because there was so much stuff still in the house. Like a couch, checkbooks, some clothes, just random stuff. And we'd peek around, being stupid high school kids. It was a 2-story house with a basement that I'd personally only been in once. It just stank and was pretty gross. Stairs to the 2nd floor with 2 bedrooms on both sides. Nothing super big. Well, one night, sometime in late September, a group of us went out. 3 of them are siblings, 2 boys and a younger girl, our other friend, and me. We stopped by the local Casey's to get gas, and one of the boys comes in with me. Thinking it would be funny, I bought an air horn and he got silly string to scare the others while we go into this old creepy house. It was dark out and figured we'd have a bit of fun. We pulled up to the house, turned the car off, and we all start up to the house. The door is unlocked as it always is, so we go in through the back. We're playing around in the living room and kitchen, being stupid, going through cabinets and closets. Nothing really interesting, so we turned our attention to the upstairs bedrooms. Now, this is the weirdest crap I've ever experienced in my whole life. The order is the oldest sibling, our guy friend, the little sister, younger brother, and me in the back. I'm getting ready to blow the air horn when the door to the right bedroom upstairs starts to close. Not fully, but enough to get everyone's attention. we all freeze on the stairs and turn our flashlights off. I'm holding my breath just to listen to any sounds, and everyone is deathly silent. About a minute passes before the flashlights go back on, when what I can only explain is the largest crashing I've ever heard. It sounded like someone had picked up the stove and threw it across the kitchen. I bolted to the door with my other friend, only to find that it's now locked. We ended up leaving through a window and ran to the car. When we got there, I could hear my friend still screaming inside, so we both jogged back to the door to find them all panicking, trying to get it open. For some reason, we could open it from the outside, and we all ran back to the car and got in. We drove away, and myself and the younger girl sibling are crying, while the guys are trying to make sense of what the hell happened. Now I'm 32 years old, and I don't believe in ghosts, but I have absolutely no idea what that was. No one was in the house with us. The noise came from behind me, in a room we all had just been in. The door was locked after we had all just came through it. I rarely tell this story because I feel crazy for it. I never went back to the house, and when I did years later, it had been demolished. Hey guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you have any ghost stories you would like to share with me, you can email them to me at scarediariesyt@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. Thank you again for listening, and have a wonderful day, my friends. Bye.